Hello, everyone. Hello. Hi. So a few of you heard there was a QR code out there. You can pull up the report. Also, it is on our website, right, Risa? It is under the advocacy tab. So you can also look at the report if you want to, why they're talking. It's a bigger report, and we are going to be making them into some smaller sections in the next few weeks. But the full report is up on our website. So again, welcome to the 11 o'clock panel discussion examining the economic impact of Wisconsin's biohealth industry. This is going to be a great panel discussion on success stories, challenges we are facing, and an analysis of the data from BioForward's 2022 Wisconsin BioHealth Economic Impact Report. And then Rebecca Epperson of the Chartwell Agency, BioForward's PR firm, and they're great. We'll also be ending the session with a how to use this report presentation. And again, we're going to be working with them in a couple weeks, and we're going to have more and more on our website on how to use this report in different activities. Let's say it's advocacy to your corporate offices, whatever it may be. We're going to put them in different types of reports and just letting you know how to use the report. So before inviting our panelists out, I would first like to introduce Danielle Mooring, who is representing Luminex, our sponsor of this session, to say a few words. Thank you.
Hi guys, it's good to see everybody today. I'm Danielle. I work as a manager and scientist at Luminex DiSorin in Madison. I have worked there for 9 years. Don't clap for that, it's not that exciting. My 9-year anniversary was in August, and it's given me a lot of time to reflect and think back on my time with the company. And one of my favorite things is the amount of time I get to spend in the lab. That's kind of going down as a manager now. One thing that was a negative is that wearing jeans to work for 9 years did require me to go and buy dress pants yesterday because I needed to give a 2-minute speech to all of you guys, and I wanted to look professional and not wear jeans. It was a good reason to go shopping, though. Thinking back, though, on my 9 years, I have a lot of things that I'm happy about, a lot of things I'm proud of, a few things that I would do different, but the number one thing that's fun to look back on is all the connections that I've made in my 9 years in the biotech industry. And a lot of those connections came from Luminex, but a lot came from events like this or through the university. And what is interesting is the connections at Luminex mostly. Over those 9 years, a lot of those people would go, they'd move to different companies, but those connections held really strong. And so as those connections moved out, I then met more connections through those companies, and my web of connections started to expand and get bigger. And I was thinking about it, and it was really interesting to think about all of the companies in Madison and how important they are to Madison and my social life. And what I am really proud of is to work for a company that is sponsoring this panel to talk about the impact of all those biotech industries on the economy, especially here in Madison. So without further ado, put your hands together and let's welcome the panel.
Wow. There's a lot of people to talk about Wisconsin and biotech in Wisconsin. Thank you everyone for joining today. It's a very exciting moment because every other year we produce that document. And that document shows the result of your work and the impact of your work on the economy of our state. So it's a very, very important document, and we're very excited to release it. But that document needs to have a life and to work to also benefit us as an industry, from the biohealth industry to the medical device and the health services. That document is really the result of our work at all. And yes, it does have an impact. It does have an impact because our industry is now seen and is perceived as the fastest growing industry in Wisconsin. So let's hear that. He's speechless.
Hey there, folks. Governor Tony Evers here. I'm so glad to be joining you today for this year's Wisconsin BioHealth Summit and to help kick off this panel discussion about the economic impact of Wisconsin's biohealth industry. Today's conference and panel discussion are incredibly important as the biohealth industry is one of Wisconsin's leading employers and a huge economic driver for our state with an economic impact of over $28.8 billion. The industry supports over 46,000 jobs across more than 1,700 employers. We're ranked first in the nation in medical imaging manufacturing, and we're home to nearly $934 million invested annually in biohealth research and development. Folks, that's all to say Wisconsin is a key player in the life sciences industry, and we're not planning to slow down anytime soon. In Wisconsin, companies can research new therapies for debilitating diseases, bring them to market, and manufacture them all right here. And that's pretty remarkable stuff, folks. That's why my administration has been proud to support and invest in the biohealth industry in Wisconsin, because we know that together we can build a stronger, healthier future for our state and our nation, and we're already well on our way. So with that, I want to thank BioForward, its board, and all the partners and industry leaders here today. And I hope you have a great rest of your discussion. Thank you.
So it's just a sign that our industry is definitely under the radar and is a major, and it's becoming a major contribution to the state. So, but what's the industry? So I'm going to go for 10 minutes of boring slides just for you, and then after that we'll get the example and how it's put at play with our panelists here. So the biohealth industry is 6 segments, right? The biomedical research and testing, the digital health, drug and pharmaceutical, medical device and equipment, and biohealth-related distribution. And I know here in Madison, we have a lot of representation of biotech and biomanufacturing, but it is much larger than that. And there's a subsegment on its own, which is also part of our value chain, our ecosystem, which are the healthcare services. And all of them accounts for that major cluster. So what is it? Sorry, the figures are a bit small, but it's directly 51,000 jobs in the States. Over 2,000 establishments. We'll come back on that. We are an industry that pays in average much higher than any other industry, and an industry that also generates other jobs aside of our segments, and that's very important for us. Our industry also is the industry that progresses the fastest in terms of recruitment and employment. And we all know here in that room that it can also become a problem that we need to address as a cluster. In short, and Lisa mentioned that during the keynote this morning, it's 51,000 jobs. It's $9.7 billion in wages and benefit. And it is, good news, Governor, it's no longer 28, but the recent update, it's $31 billion of economical output. And the state should be happy because it generates $1.2 billion in taxes, and the federal government is going to also be happy because it generates $2 billion. So we are a good industry for our country, right? Across the different segments, from biomedical research to medical devices, we are growing a lot in terms of employment. Especially, of course, in biomedical research and testing, because it's a very labor-intensive industry. And that shows really much the dynamic of the industry. And I want also to point out that it is not a medicine industry. It's a statewide industry, right? We have different clusters. Medicine, yes, is more biotech. We have a strong university here too, but it's all across the state with medical devices, with different segments. And what we are going to see also later is all the supporting industry that helps us getting to where we are. And those are coming from all the states. So the industry is really much covering all of Wisconsin. We were talking about wages. The average wages in Wisconsin is close to 60K. In some of our clusters or segments of the industry, we have much higher salaries. Yes, we have more skilled people. We have more skilled labor compared to other industry. But there's also a thing that all of you as an industry are doing. You are probably most certainly more respectful of employees. You're giving back much more to employees, maybe that other industries do, because that's in our genes. So those are interesting factors. There are very much two strongholds in Wisconsin. We've been talking about medical devices, and that's something that is established for a long time, especially in Milwaukee. And that's a very established thing with some strong specialty here. And then the fastest growing segment is the one of drug and pharma and biomanufacturing. So we hear a lot about biomanufacturing. We hear a lot about President Biden's initiative to promote that. Wisconsin has something to tell and has something to say for that biomanufacturing as well. So not only Wisconsin is one of the leading states on medical devices, digital health, but it's also now growing all that biomanufacturing environment, which is the industry for the 21st century. So that's what, in short, you'll find in that survey. So I can only encourage you to go and get that little blue book that I put, I don't know where, because it can be useful for you at different levels, right? You work for companies who are sometimes wondering if they need to stay here or move somewhere else. Just like wave that blue book and say, there's a lot of things here for us to do. You are venture capitalists, or you are investors, or you are going to a startup phase, and you are looking forward to where you could grow and thrive. Yeah, welcome to Wisconsin. You have all the environment to do it. So is that perfect? No, there are things that we need to improve. But I would like to now give some insights on how we get there with our panelists. So I'm going to move here, right? And I'm going to mess up my papers for a second. So let's start with Craig. Yeah. One of the things that we have in Wisconsin is an opportunity to develop a better and broader infrastructure. Like we've been talking about how labor intensive our industry is. We need room, right? And Craig, you're going to present yourself and all the insights you have on that real estate challenges that we have here in Wisconsin.
Thank you, Nicholas. I always sort of start out when I describe our market in three ways. It's sort of three descriptions of how to look at the life science company. And I'm going to first apologize to Milwaukee-based companies. Most of the information I'm going to provide is related to Dane County. But this is really a national problem, a challenge, I'll say, relative to life science space and the facilities that support that. But I sort of describe the Dane County market as three types of companies and three types of facilities. There's the grass growing, the small companies, the startups that need just small space. There's the saplings that need sort of bigger space, and then there's the oak that are building very, very large spaces. And Arrowhead Pharma, what they're building right now in Verona, that 300,000 square foot facility, is an example of one of those oaks. Exact Sciences, Catalent, those are some of the large oaks in the marketplace. And our challenge right now is currently, over the next 12 months, facilities are being completed, and there's over 1 million square feet being worked on right now of demand or completed projects, and a 6 million square foot market in life science in Dane County. That is a huge demand. There's approximately 700,000 being built in that demand, 750,000. That includes the Research Park's new Element Lab, as well as USDA's 300,000 square feet, the 200,000 square feet, and the large facility I referenced with Arrowhead. But there's over 300,000 square feet of demand that's trying to find homes in the marketplace, and that's the real challenge. Is there's essentially there's no vacancy available for those tenants, and that's why the Research Park is building the building they're building. That demand is going to happen. That demand we don't see slowing down. Planned for the next 36 months, we see about over 750 of major projects. It doesn't even include small tenants, those grass-growing saplings that I outlined. Those are out in the marketplace as well. So my advice to the work we do, Broadwing does, is we assist these companies trying to align their real estate to the needs of what's out there. And my advice to any tenant and as an industry is, how do we plan ahead for that? And I'll talk about conversions in a second. How do you, if you're working with a company or you're in a company, how do you plan ahead? How do you find the right design partner? And how do you find the right construction partner? Because this is a very capital-intensive industry. If you look at any major project, there are millions, $450 to $900 a square foot to build some of these facilities. And if you're doing just tenant improvements, i.e. the space within the four walls, those numbers can run anywhere from $150 to $400 a foot of improvements. Hugely capital-intensive projects, and it's important to plan ahead relative to that. What we're seeing in the marketplace, that gap in available space that's, quote, life science space, the Research Park, until they bring the new project online, they will not have any available space in the near term till September or thereafter. What's happening? So it's examples actually, like Luminex is a great example. They have a little over 30,000 square foot facility on the west side that they converted an old single-story office building to a lab building. They were able to vent out their life science space and still have support office space that had that. PPD is another example. But you also have examples of companies making do with what was out there. A company on the west side converted a warehouse building, and that's Illumina just converted a warehouse building for lab use. So these are challenges that are very capital intensive, and they're not your typical lab building that we noticed in the Aldebaran, where it was very purpose built. These are conversions, and how do companies make do and control those costs? So that's kind of a high level outline of what we see. I'm happy to chime into specific challenges or answer questions along those lines. I don't know if there's anything else you want me to cover.
I think there's I've got one or two questions here. The first question is, and probably for those of you who thinking about expanding, etc., what do you need to start with? How do you approach the thing? Are you trying to find the land first, or how do you work that?
Well, it depends on the company. I'll give the extreme example and use Arrowhead. Arrowhead went through a process of looking. They knew they needed a major facility, and they really looked at site selection and where do they locate. But if you're 10,000 square feet and need to build a small GMP manufacturing, what does that look like is a very different animal. And I always say start with your design partners, start with your construction partners so you understand your capital budgets on the front end. The real estate is one element of that, but how you fund that. Landlords, even landlords that have done a lot of life science, Research Park included, have a limited capital to be able to put in projects. So that capital gets pushed on, the capital to improve the buildings, to build those labs, to build those GMP facilities, really gets pushed onto the tenant. And understanding that capital structure and I'm sure Jason could outline this, that the challenges they've had of getting capital approval is a key factor to consider early in a project and making sure you understand. And what are your alternatives if it cost 20 million and you only have 10 million? How do you bridge your strategy to execute your product or service that you're outlining in the life science space?
Okay, so the pushy question is like, is there enough capital in Wisconsin to support that?
It's a challenge nationwide right now, and rising interest rates are a key factor with that. And you know, this is one of the challenges we have. There are life science developers, life science owners who are banging the door, seeing the opportunity to invest in Madison and Wisconsin-based companies. The challenge is, do we have enough? I'll say the demand, is the demand allowing the supply to grow, and what are the constraints on the supply? And the constraints on the supply are capital, both from a capital market standpoint and the ability to build, and also the creditworthiness. How are the investors, i.e. the developers, willing to invest in companies? And take the research park as an example. They made a bet to build 140,000 square feet because they saw the demand. And I still believe my numbers show, but the numbers in the market show there's still a fair amount of demand. How do we as a broader community invest in that? Aaron and I were talking about this earlier, of getting from a statewide to invest in improvements, because the churn of, and I don't mean this in a bad way, of companies that are continuing to develop, how do we continue to invest in that and repurpose space relative to that capital? And I think there's a huge opportunity. We do have a limited supply right now that is the challenge we have, but that opportunity is a real opportunity for us to continue to grow. Not to take away from some of the other challenges in labor and how do we recruit. Those are key challenges, but the supply side of real estate is one of those opportunities we really have to be able to continue to grow the industry as we've seen. And if I look back 20 years, my analogy back to grass growing, we only had a few oaks. We had Promega, we had Covance at the time. And if you look at today, we have 20, 30 oaks that are in the market just in Dane County alone. And that's a real opportunity that I continue to see our demand for labor, our demand for all the positive things that this report shows, really an opportunity for us to grow.
Thank you. So talking about opportunity to grow, we have here a list of facility investment and companies who have really invested in Wisconsin over the past year. So I know it's totally impossible to read. So that's why we got you an example.
Yeah.
So Jason with Millipore Sigma, tell us about the story and how, if my memory is good, like the company back in the day like went out of Wisconsin and then came back to Wisconsin.
Yeah, I'll hopefully there's some parallels with folks here in the audience as far as our story. And I will say, when I'm asked to be on this panel, I usually sit on technical panels to talk about the economy. It was kind of exciting. But also, personally, I had just moved to the area about 2.5 years ago. So certainly I wanted to say, hey, is this the right place to be? And the report absolutely reflects that. It shows growth. I also tried to look at it through an eye of through COVID. Hey, was this growth inspired by some of the challenges that we all went through and are going through now? And I see this growth as having started even before that. And so that slide you're showing now, when I saw that, I think a lot of, I've got some colleagues in the audience, we all see all the expansion and we think of, oh my gosh, there's a lot of challenge out there. You talked about labor. I would say that with growth comes us all pulling from the same labor pool. So a little bit about Millipore Sigma and I'll say our local presence. In the state of Wisconsin, we've got just under or approaching 2,000 with Milwaukee, Sheboygan, and Madison, Verona. Locally here in Dane County, the Madison, Verona sites are about 340. I would say we've probably hired in the last 2 years close to 90 people. That's pretty good compared to our 340 max. And what we saw was essentially our own growth. We make active pharmaceutical ingredients with a big emphasis on high potent manufacturing. And so one platform that feeds is the ADC drug market. And so we started to see approvals there in 2019, 2020 that really required us to kind of raise our game and also look for more capacity. The ADC market is about $9 billion. And so you talked about real estate. We started our expansion out in Verona and to help meet that market need. So with all that comes the need to hire talent, the need to, what I liked hearing today was the ecosystem. I've heard that in multiple talks here at this point, and bringing that ecosystem with the business that we bring, it starts to grow. And so I would say we moved through the last 2 years, hiring is something that has been a big focus for us, but we've also seen the gaps because of where we are in the maturity of the bioscience industry. And so, what we look forward to now is having brought our expansion online, starting to fill that capacity. We're already looking at expanding even more. And so you've changed the slide, but the slide that really lists all of our colleagues in this bioscience community, we're all growing. I mean, it really speaks to that. And I think the gap that we'll need to fill is this part about the ecosystem. I think we'll talk about the indirect impact to the economy. And I know that we leverage a lot of contract support outside of the Madison area because it's not here.
Yeah.
And so as we grow and as all the teams grow here, you're going to need those peripheral organizations to support the weight of this growth. It's a good problem to have. And so for me, it tells me that it's not here yet, but it will start to come. We won't need to go to the East Coast or the West Coast to get that support. We'll have people saying, hey, there's so much work in that Midwest area that we can set up shop to support the Millipore Sigmas, the Promegas, the Catalents, and support their metrology needs, their PM needs, their air handling needs, all those things that just come with general maintenance of the facility. So I don't think our journey's been unique. I think you can find any member of the scientific community here and talk about what hiring was like in the last couple of years and the challenges associated with that, but it was all because of the growth that is in our industry right now. So it's actually quite exciting. So
that's very exciting, and it's also something that we need to emphasize is also that growth is not only in Madison. There are pockets all around Wisconsin with potential resources, etc., as you've demonstrated for you, and we can see from that yeah, I mean, for all the industry, there's growing parts outside of Madison, so it's really much a statewide industry. So indeed, you are also mentioning that it's an ecosystem, right? And that ecosystem, I'm going to skim through, that thing is, well, okay. That ecosystem here, I just want to show the example of the company that I'm heading, Garson, who is a manufacturer of life science instrumentation. Everybody knows us for the pipette man and all the liquid handlers and chromatography system that we've been doing for years and years and years. Well, I would say decades and decades. It's interesting to see that we have factories in Europe, we have factories here, but when I look at the unit here in Madison, 40% of what we source comes from a radius of 50 miles around the factory, not more. And it has shown during the pandemic that it was a tremendous competitive advantage because we were able to get the product much faster out of the door. And that's also something that I wanted to point out, I don't have the slide here, is that if you compare the weight of the biohealth industry in Wisconsin compared to the size of manufacturing, it's much smaller. But like Gilson first is in the record a manufacturing entity, so it falls into the manufacturing part. And second is all of us companies are providing a lot of work to a lot of ecosystem around that. And I think this is something that is, at least talking for Gilson, a very unique thing where we can have everything we need in a radius of 50 or 100 miles. And as a consequence for our company, we're planning to increase the sourcing of local component or local services up to 60%, because we've demonstrated how efficient it was. So that's just to support what you were saying about that. Now, if we talk about, what do I have here? We talk about the ecosystems here. Of course, we have a very strong university system. And of course, those university is creating a lot of IP, and in turn is going to also create a lot of startups. And we try to do as much as we can, even if the funding, the NIH funding or the SBR funding is pretty low in Wisconsin compared to other states. We probably don't capture the share that we should be capturing. There's a growing VC and angel investment in Wisconsin, which is good. We're going to touch that on a moment. But the challenge that we're facing is that we're creating all that IP and all that value. And then the risk that we take is that once that IP is growing and turning into promising companies, they leave Wisconsin. They leave Wisconsin because we don't have the infrastructure, or we don't have the capital, or we don't do enough to retain them, right? So that thing about innovation, and those, you can see a lot of the statistic about VC and angel money investment here. But that's part of the challenge here. But we have success story, and success story here. Oops, it's going too fast. Success story of those companies who elect Wisconsin to be the place to grow. And I would like to turn to Stefan here. Stefan, tell us your story and the reason why you ended up here.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. You're talking about going the other way, developing IP here, developing a startup, and then moving it out of Wisconsin. Our story is actually quite the opposite. Leo Cancer Care was originally founded in Australia. And while Australia is a beautiful place to live, the beaches are fantastic, and the weather's definitely much better than Wisconsin, particularly in the winter. That's a really difficult place to grow a business. And when you're in the healthcare space, there's no doubt about it that the US is still the center of the healthcare universe. If you're going to run a healthcare business, you want to be here in the US. So we grew to a point in Australia and just realized we need to be in America from an investment point of view, from an access to talent, the infrastructure that you're talking about is here in the US. And at that point, I'd never raised any venture capital money before. I'm a physicist by background. Those two things, well, maybe me as an individual, polar opposites. To raise venture capital, you've got to be confident and stand up and sell something. And I'm a socially awkward physicist that much prefers to sit in a corner and look at the wall, you know? So when I moved over from Australia and knew I needed to be in the US, I read a book called Venture Deals, which is always my number one recommendation. Anyone that's going to go and raise money that hasn't done it before, read that book. But when I came here, I very, very naively looked at the VC landscape and said, well, where does money exist? If I'm going to go and raise venture capital and I'm not very good at it, not very experienced, where do I go? And I naturally originally went to California and to San Francisco and spent some time there going and talking to VCs, and learned very, very quickly that there was a lot I didn't know. But what I realized there is, yes, there's access to talent, and we're in the radiation therapy space, and there are radiation therapy companies there. There's access to talent you can manufacture there, but golly, it's immensely expensive to do it. And there's a huge amount of competition. And if you're going to look in the US and think, I'm a socially awkward physicist, the last place you want to be is there competing with Californians, because they are the most confident people on the planet. So, I started going and exploring different areas, and the co-founder of Leo Cancer Care is Rock Mackey, who I know is a bit of a god in this area for medical technologies. So he said, Stephen, why don't you come up to Wisconsin? Why don't you come up to Madison, and I can introduce you to a few investors here as well. So I did. And we were talking about this the other day. What I realized, being British, you can tell my funny accent, what I realized is actually, of all the places I've been in the US, Wisconsin is actually, to me, most like home. Because what you find, and I think this is, when people ask me about the challenges of bringing external capital into Madison, into Wisconsin, you have the same problems as Brits, that actually this place is incredible. There's amazing places to go and manufacture. The UW has one of the best research groups in the country. This is a fantastic place to develop a company. But in the same way as Brits, people in Wisconsin are almost ashamed of the fact that you're amazing, and ashamed of the fact that it's fantastic. We're really, really shy about the fact here that we've got so much to offer. And I think that's what we need to continue to develop, is that ability to stand up and say, this is an amazing place to build a business. We've got the infrastructure. And then the capital comes. We've raised now at Leo $60 million US dollars. And that's allowed us to grow, and that is important. The infrastructure, the development relies on capital. But in all honesty, a lot of that money has not come from Wisconsin. I've raised money in Saudi Arabia, Singapore, Australia, Slovenia, Italy, all over the place. And I think through COVID, what we found is that there's less of a necessity to, for venture capitalists to sit there and say, well, if I'm investing my money, it needs to be on my doorstep. I think people realize through, Zoom and things like that, hate it or love it, that you can do things remotely. You can make an investment. Some of my investors in Singapore I've still never met face to face. And that mentality of COVID has changed things there. So, my second piece of advice, other than read venture deals, is always, in the same way, if you were an investor making your investments, you will try and diversify your portfolio to reduce your risk, invest in various different things. When you're raising money, do exactly the same. Geographically diversify your pool of investors. Go and talk to investors in Singapore. Go and talk to investors in Saudi Arabia, Australia, everywhere. Because that does one of two things for you. It really reduces your risk of being able to go and raise further capital. When you're starting to build a company, founders are always guilty of saying, I just need this investment, this round, and then I'm done, that's it. All VCs have heard, this is my last round of investment. Everybody says that. But you're always going to need more money. So if you just focus on Wisconsin to raise that capital, where do you go when you need the next round? You go back to the same pool of investors. It's more work. I never thought studying physics I'd become well-versed in securities law in Singapore. I'm not sure I still wanted to be well-versed in that, but it's a lot of work going doing it. But what that means is if there is an economic downturn or something goes wrong in the US, I can go back and talk to more investors in Singapore. So I think what we need to do to build companies here is really shout more about what we have in Wisconsin, the fantastic talent we have, the amazing schools that we have here, the infrastructure, the resources, and the capital will come. We will see that, but I think as startups and founders of companies, we need to open our eyes a little bit more and look outside of just Madison or Wisconsin, even the US, and go out and try and bring that capital in, because it is there. And particularly in places like San Francisco, those investors realize that you can get a lot more for your money if the company is built and developed outside of California.
That's I'm not going to comment on the accent, sorry for that. But that's just to prove that Yes, I totally agree on that. We are like a bit shy in Wisconsin to claim a global footprint. And that report somewhat is a base to help saying like, no, we're not a flyover state. We are a destination. And if you elect to stay here, yeah, go outside of Wisconsin, go get the money where it is. And all of the support that BioForward, et cetera, is going to give you is to help those VCs or investors locating Wisconsin and not look at you like with like where, like Wisconsin being a very good place to grow money, right? So that's I think a very good example. Thank you for that. Another interesting thing here, we know that we have a wonderful university system here, and the systems, the share of total of science-related degrees is 21%, all the degrees, and it's slightly above the national average. We have here a nice and interesting graph that said like we have a system that is so good that it produces a lot of elites, like very high-level scientists, very high-level and skilled people, which is wonderful. But when you look at this, you see also that you have a shortage in the people who are going to be at the bench, the people who are going to be the technician. When you put that alongside of the need of the biomanufacturing industry, we really see that we have a gap here. And that gap, the BioForward has started to help, when was that, 2 or 3 years ago? To say, we're going to shout out loud that Wisconsin is a good place to be and try to attract more talent in Wisconsin. So Rebecca, you were heading that, so maybe you can come at the podium.
I'm in marketing, I gotta stand up. Thank you. And I recognize very clearly that I stand between us and lunch, so very clearly. And
We kept them alive, like the green button.
the green button, the go button.
Okay. Go ahead, one more.
One more.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, so we've been working with BioForward for about 2 or 3 years. One of the things we were first started working with the organization on is a talent campaign. No surprise. One of the biggest deficits that we have is making sure that we bring people or keep people, retain or attract people back to our region and our state. And there's a lot of good news. And so I know the other thing y'all wake up and every morning is like, I can't wait to get the BioForward Economic Impact Report and read through it and market it. So I'm going to give you some ideas of how you can use it, because we don't want this, which takes a lot of time and effort for organizations to put together, to report back out. And it's good news, folks. It's good news that we have here in Wisconsin about what's going on in the BioHealth and the biotech area. So let's shout it from the rooftops. I'm just going to take you on the road. And tell others about it. But it's also our job as organizations here in Wisconsin to share this information with others. So one, use it in recruitment marketing. And I know that you might delegate that to HR or maybe even marketing, but consider how you can use it in a lot of different manners rather than just hoping that, because hope is not a strategy, right? So how can you use it to sell the region to prospects? Well, first of all, build awareness of the region. Help people understand the greatness of the Wisconsin area. I grew up just north of here in Baraboo, and I love everything about it. And but we have great employee culture-focused platforms. Use display ads. If you don't know anything about digital, it's the best way to reach people. Very significant, very focused versus what we call a shotgun approach and hoping you're going to hit a lot of people. Be very deliberate, because we have deliberate people we're trying to hire in most cases. Develop interest in jobs. Develop content. In my world, it's called content strategy. It's like writing content on your website, putting stuff out on your social media, writing letters to your local newspapers, whether it's Madison, Milwaukee, Sheboygan, it doesn't matter. Get the word out. Help share the values that are in this report, and there's chunks of it. And as Lisa had said earlier, we're going to kind of dice this up a little bit so it's not so overwhelming, and give that back to you also for tips and ideas of how you can further market this region. And then, nurture to earn a response. make it easy. And a lot of people just say, go to our website. Well, I know that the last place I ever go is my own website. So take a tour of your website. I encourage you and ask you to consider that, because is it the most friendly, opening, yeah, we want you to come and work for us environment? That's our first door. That's our virtual door these days, folks. So is it nurturing? Is it open? Or is there a landing page you can, just for those people you want to attract to the region overall? This I thought was really interesting. So 73% of people that are hired are called passive job applicants, meaning they are not looking for a job. So we need to reach, so that means there's a lot less people looking for jobs that you want to hire for, right? So how do we reach those people, promote Wisconsin, promote the jobs at your locations, at your facilities, at your businesses? They're not looking, so now we got to reach them in different ways, and that's continuing from a bio-forward organizational standpoint, but also from a individual organization standpoint, promoting, everything from the lifestyle to the cost of living to the great things we have to offer in all the regions of Wisconsin, to the job opportunities, to this really great cluster of biotech, biohealth organizations we have that fosters ongoing growth. And use your own employees, because like employees, right? So how do you reach those folks as well? This one I thought was interesting too. In a recent survey, I have to read this, job seekers ranked these attributes in yellow as the most important. Compensation, okay. Work-life balance, I think that's become more and more in tune with what we think about every day since COVID even. Location, not location like there is, it's Los Angeles or San Francisco or the West Coast or the East Coast, but think about the location we have in Wisconsin, the cost of living, the things to do, easy to get around, where you can bring up your kids, good schools, et cetera. That's what they're looking for. And then job security. Now, job security, to some of us, think about staying in that job for X amount of years. And as a person that owns a business, I want to keep all my employees as long as possible. However, I also want to have a great talent base in the region that I work. And so that might mean they want to look for a place that John Doe might come to Wisconsin and think that he's going to stay at this company for 20 years, but after maybe 10, he wants to look for something different. He doesn't have to leave Wisconsin, right? Job security is having enough options around us to continue to infiltrate and make sure that we're hiring great people and keeping great people in this region. And the same thing for our college grads. We just saw the colleges and university. I mean, we are full of awesome organizations and higher institutions in our state. So how do we keep them, grow them, retain them throughout their career and your business? So from a growth strategy standpoint, inform people about your next move. Learn about the attributes of each region. You might know a lot about Madison, but do you know a lot about Sheboygan? Do you know a lot about Green Bay? If we all work together, they may not land, these individuals or even the startup capital or other things may not land in your neck of the woods, but it's important to bring them in to keep them here. So use that to inform your growth strategies as well. What's next? Building relationships. We talk, and even as we're here today, we talk to thousands of people on an annual basis. So let's not keep it to ourselves. Look at sharing with your team. Go back to your offices and help your team talk about the opportunity at your business or this region based on this report, right? So don't be that solo voice. It's, what is it? Rising tides raise all ships. Did I say that right or wrong? Yeah, something like that. Talk to partners. Make sure that when you're talking to investors or builders or other things, they understand the scope of biohealth and biotech in our region as well. The community is large, our community here. Make sure we're talking about it. Make sure we're asking questions. Make sure we're pushing buttons of things that need to get better, as well as outside the community, right? Let's make sure our politicians and our elected officials and others really understand the importance of biohealth and biotech in our area. And then the media. We do a lot of pushing on the media. We've got a lot of good coverage for BioForward and a lot of the partners. I know that we've worked with a lot of you here as well. Don't let them discount you, and I'm going to take a phrase from Lisa. Don't let them keep calling us Rust Belt. We are not a Rust Belt. We are an innovative overall organization, community of bright-minded people that have outlasted and outlived the Rust Belt idea And if we can help everybody say these things together, there's a lot more impact that we can have than one individual or one report can ever do. And that's what I have. Yep.
Thank you very
welcome.
much. Thank you for that very nice guide. So this is it. This is how you could use that report. We produce that report every 2 years. That's a tool for you. We've just like skimmed the surface. We have tons of valuable data in the report. As Lisa mentioned, BioForward is going to produce more like specific reports that you could use. Also, BioForward is going to use that report to also move its own strategic action to support. We've mentioned like the communication, of course, this is something that BioForward is doing, but also some like key initiative in training more people or attracting more capital. And the keynote of today is already an effort to put Wisconsin also on the map of VC and the next step, which is now, you know, private equity. So before giving you the floor and asking some question, I like my little net promoter score survey. Who in the room, and you're going to raise your hand, thinks that it's good to be in Wisconsin, wants to stay in Wisconsin, and would be promoting Wisconsin to a friend out of state? Who would do that? Wow, we did a good job, right? That's exactly what you need to do every day, because that's going to help cultivating that ecosystem here. Now we'll be more than happy to answer some questions. Now, we can probably structure that like twofold. I can give you the big picture, and those guys are going to give them the boots on the ground type of picture. The big picture is like Wisconsin is like 5 million people, and it's not growing much. It's like more stable. Like you have people in, people out, etc. So the labor that we have is stable. The education system is producing a lot of scientists, but it's not enough for the needs of the community. So to be blunt and honest, there's two things. We need three things. We need the right mix within the scientific community. Like if everybody's a post-PhD doctorate, that's probably not what the state needs, right? So there are going to be few initiatives that BioForward is going to support in helping training more entry-level position, for instance, because we know there's a gap between what is available and what is needed by the industry. So that's one thing. The second thing is we need to attract more people towards the scientific area. So don't repeat that out of that room, but we're in competition with the other industries. We need to attract people in our industry among that group of 5 million people. So those are things also that we need to develop here. And third, yes, it's all about convincing people from out of state to move here, right? And maybe like Jason, you have.
I imagine most companies have their own approach. I can only speak for ours. I know that this was something that we identified as a need. We have active programs within our organization to promote diversity and inclusion. And some things work, some things don't, right? And so I'm a fan of changing course if things are not attracting a diverse workforce. There's a lot of data at this point that shows that a more diverse workforce is a more productive workforce. That's been established. I think for the scientific community, there's still a lot of work to do to be community outreach as far as setting up the STEM programs and reaching out to those STEM programs, and also supporting internships, co-ops, things like that. And so we have that within our own organization here locally. But it's something that we look at and adjust to try and close that gap, because it's a legitimate gap. And we recognize it, but it's something we're intentional about in our hiring as well.
We're finalizing a transaction right now with Exact Science, actually opening an HR office at the Urban League's new hub in South Madison. I think those are the types of things, and I see that conversation in other companies that we were working with, of how do they recruit talent, what does that look like, and I'm just very familiar with it relative to Exact, so it's a good example, and how do we build on that?
One of the things that was mentioned a couple of times is the desire to have either more services, supporting services, and/or suppliers in the Wisconsin area. So I'm wondering if there is anything that BioForward is doing or that companies are doing to try and cultivate that part of the ecosystem.
That's an excellent question that doesn't have a very simple answer. Let me elaborate on that. BioForward is about 400 members, and what we try to do, yes, is to generate that collaboration, right? It's very interesting because this is one of the things at the board level or even at the team level that sometimes is a bit frustrating, is that difficulty that the ecosystem has to get together and really collaborate. If you look at all of that, there's everything, right? And we multiply the networking sessions, the different like focus initiatives, etc. There's been quite a very good collaboration on the resources, because that's something that everybody is struggling with. For other things, we always like mixed success, and I have to say this is something where BioForward is going to also work and reinforce through the tools that we have, like cooperation, networking, and to try to have people working together more, because, and I'm addressing here the whole attendance, like you always have the solution of the problem of your neighbor here. Like we can, as BioForward, like put you in contact, create those connections, but you have to do the rest, right? At the end of the day, you have to be willing to join that ecosystem and collaborate with each other, because that's how we're going to be successful, I think. All right. Sorry. Huh.
You call it advanced manufacturing, you call it computer-assisted manufacturing, you call it, I work with companies in the communities that I work with, and I always call it advanced manufacturing, because I think the word manufacturing with them. Can you help me determine a different way to describe manufacturing? All different facets.
In prep for this panel, we had this discussion very specifically about one of the bubbles on the document that describes Wisconsin and manufacturing. And we really talked about how to break out kind of the life science side of manufacturing and what does that mean. And what's funny is that the bubbles on it's negative growth overall, but if you look at the life science side, that bubble of that diagram is actually hugely positive growth. And that's the best way that I describe. I don't know, we talked about this. Anything additional to that?
What I would say, yeah, just promoting a kind of a different form of manufacturing. I think it's important and something that we're really trying to do is have companies work with their suppliers to promote each other. So, if you're taking somebody that's doing large metalwork fabrications, if you're just looking at that manufacturer that's doing those large pieces of metal, doesn't really promote that manufacturer to show their capabilities. But I think if you do, both the manufacturer and then the company that they're supplying it to promote together, what it shows is what that large metal fabrication is actually being used for. And that's what then starts to give the impression that that fabricator is in advanced manufacturing. It's just promoting each other and the uses of what's being manufactured as well that's important.
And I would add to that too, how we portray it and how we message it out is how people are going to take it, right? So I think putting advanced in front of it, talking about innovation, showing photos of what it is today, because when you think of manufacturing, you'll go back to the Rust Belt days for sure. And even in traditional manufacturing organizations, that is not even traditional anymore, right? So the level of certifications and degrees and insight that they have to have in what I would, again, call traditional manufacturing versus biohealth or bioscience area is quite different than it was. But I think it's up to us, right, to carry the message of like, this is what it is today, that's what you might have thought of it, but this is the difference today. And whether that's through comments and information that you carry out there, whether it's through your website showing photos of what your manufacturing facility looks like, what it portrays, every little piece helps along the way.
So when we can hope that in the future we are not going to talk about the Rust Belt, but like the cell belt, for instance, or something, right? So let's think about it. A cell is a good factory. It's a good manufacturer. We need to shut down that session. The hour is past. I mean, we could probably have those questions for the next hour or so. Thank you very much. Use that survey, download it. Come back to BioForward if you need more details, and we'll be more than happy to support you and go Wisconsin. Thank you.